We know very little about the sun.
On the 21st of June, the sun rises over there. We're going to one of the most impressive archaeological sites in America.
Here, we can see the remains of a great society, even more sophisticated than Rome. Each discovery leads to 10 new questions, at least.
So when one leaves one's hands with a lot of faith, one receives the sun's energy, which gives strength to the human being.
Knowing the stars, knowing the celestial bodies, the quest for knowledge satisfies a person's curiosity.
Human beings are influenced by what our star, the sun, does.
What we do, these moments make life worth living.
Our life on Earth is strongly linked with the sun. Is it possible that our mother star might one day fade and life on this planet becomes extinct? All plants depend on sunlight to produce their energy. The entire food chain of living beings that inhabit the planet rests upon this marvelous process of photosynthesis. What would the world be like without the sun? This very thought terrified pre-Columbian civilizations, so they raised magnificent temples and cities to honor the sun. But an overactive sun can also be dangerous. Should we worry about the danger of violent solar explosions that could hit our planet and destroy our technological life? We begin our journey to discovering the secrets of the sun in Mexico City. An extraordinary woman who has devoted her life to sharing science with the public will accompany us. She is Julieta Fierro, author of over 20 books, some of them written in the Mayan language. Besides her work as a researcher, Julieta attempts to rescue the rich astronomical knowledge of indigenous cultures in Mexico, where the sun played a central role.
We're visiting one of the most impressive archaeological sites in America. It is so large that when the Mexica people discovered it, they thought it had been built by the gods due to its magnitude. That's why it's called Teotihuacan, which means the site of the gods. This was a valley that had 80 water sources. It was a forestry area. And there was this very important influx of other cultures that would come and trade with the Teotihuacanos. We don't know what language they spoke or what kind of government they had, but we do know that they were people who loved life. Right now, we're entering the archaeological site of Teotihuacan. We are about 31 miles away from Mexico City, in the highlands. It's a volcanic region that's extremely fertile because volcanic ashes contain nitrogen and sulfur-fixing substances, with a great potential for agriculture.
A ver, aquí tiene mi credencial una mitad.
Mayores de 60 años jubilados o pensionados.
Ah, yo soy mayor de 60 años.
Estudiantes y maestros.
Maestra, o sea, cumplo con varios de sus requisitos. ¡Qué padre!
We're at one of the most important sites of Teotihuacan. As you see, all the structures are built in Mesoamerican style. Slope, board, and then stairs. At the top, it's very likely that there were temples where different rituals were held. This vast structure was not a dwelling place. It was rather a place for worship or trade. Well, let's enter what's commonly known as the Citadel, but it's actually the market square. The protocol for climbing the various pyramids was sideways, so that you never turned your back on the gods. Here, there was a temple where the ruling class lived. Imagine the splendor of being here, surrounded by products from all over Mesoamerica that were brought to supply this grandiose place. We're in the very middle of the Avenue of the Dead. A purely Mexican name, but it was a Teotihuacan avenue that ran through this area from south to north. We will approach the site of the Pyramid of the Moon, and to its side, the Pyramid of the Sun. Behind is one of the tallest pyramids in the world, and the second tallest in Mexico, the Pyramid of the Sun.
Within the complex architecture of the city of Teotihuacan, the Pyramid of the Sun was built in a strategic location. The pyramid was constructed on a side of the Avenue of the Dead, which runs through the entire monumental site from south to north. From the top of the pyramid, one could see the sunrise and the sunset all year round, providing a great sense of time and a very precise calendar. It was astronomical knowledge that gave the ruling class a great power over the common people.
It is a mandatory tour for Mexicans. Every time we come here, we feel exhilarated. We say that these are the moments that make life worth living.
Who were the ancient inhabitants of Teotihuacan? Who created these amazing buildings using only the strength of their hands, possibly during several generations?
Los teotihuacanos pertenecen a un periodo.
The Teotihuacans belong to a period long before the Aztecs populated this place here in central Mexico. The Teotihuacan culture, which built this great city, was responsible for spreading the knowledge of previous cultures that already existed in pre-Hispanic Mexico 1,000 years before them. After this site was deserted, it took almost 600 years for another great culture, the Mexicas or Aztecs as some call it, to take control of central Mexico. Around 100 or 50 AD, there was great volcanic activity in the area. The eruption of Zitle volcano and the disaster forced the population to leave the zone. The fleeing groups were seeking refuge in an area where they could have enough food, but most interestingly, where they could find protection in an ancient sanctuary. This ancient sanctuary lies exactly underneath us. Beneath the Pyramid of the Sun, there is a cave known from the beginning of this site's history. This cave goes about 19 feet underground and runs for a distance of nearly 324 feet. At its end, this cave is divided into 4 small chambers, forming what some consider a flower of 4 petals. Above this cave, the Pyramid of the Sun was built at the entrance of the city.
¿Cómo estás excavando el tercer piso de truco que cubría todo este cuarto? Lalo, mira, sí me gustaría que vieras, por ejemplo, atrás de ti, se puede observar el nivel de petate natural de roca madre, ¿sí? Se parte para elevar el nivel de piso para la primera ocupación, que es este precisamente.
Aguas con eso, sí. La Cruz Roja queda lejos.
The ancient Teotihuacanos and also the Mayans were great observers of the sky, both of the day and night skies. Many of the buildings are associated with the trajectory of the sun. The discovery of a cave right at this place, behind the Pyramid of the Sun, serves as evidence of this. This cave is known as an archaeological astronomical cave. When it was explored, a small trail was found, whose shadow disappears exactly during the winter solstices. These caves served as a reference for the Teotihuacans' ruling elite when it came to knowing what time of the year it was, the shortest day, the longest day, depending on the solstice. All pre-Hispanic cultures studied the sun in one way or another. They watched the heavens and were amazed to see the movement of the stars, the sun, the planets. What I find most stunning is that without any of the instruments or the technical knowledge that we currently have, they were able to calculate the solar year, perhaps even more precisely than us. Let us think that the Great Pyramids, such as the Pyramid of the Sun and the Pyramid of the Moon, are reference points and represent the sacred tree where the temple is closest to the skies, at the level of the heavens. The squares represent the earthly grounds, and the different caves, since there are many caves in Teotihuacan, represent the underworld. We can see the legacy of a great society that at the time was even more complex than the Roman civilization in Europe. Teotihuacan had no comparison to any other city. Teotihuacan is unique. Nothing like it was ever built before or after.
After discovering the importance of the sun in the imposing city of Teotihuacan, Julieta recommends that we explore another mysterious site. A place where everything seems to revolve around the sun and reveals its importance for the native cultures in America ages before the arrival of the Spaniards.
Tenemos el enorme placer de estar
We are delighted to be in Malinalco, an archaeological site that is highly relevant for astronomy and for other cultural issues.
The whole archaeological area of Malinalco is situated within the route that leads up to the Pacific Ocean. This is one of the most important temples, since this was the hub of power. It is thought that taxes were collected here, and most importantly, there was a time when this was used for military training.
We need to remember that this was during the Stone Age. There were no metals, no animals to carry things. But the carving is still extremely refined. It's amazing. Afterwards, it didn't always look like this, since it got plastered and painted. These are just spectacular places. Nowadays, it might seem a bit exaggerated, since we're used to seeing gray-looking ruins, but even the Greek marble statues were painted.
This is known as a monolithic temple because it is carved from only one piece of rock. First, the hill had to be evened out with rock instruments of a harder stone, like pickaxes, which are known as tesitas in Spanish. The monolithic temple is very peculiar since it was built with the intention of expressing the Mexica imperial power, in conjunction with a similar temple that they had in Mexico City. Globally, all the monolithic temples are tombs, or temples for meditation, and for religious purposes. But, in this case, this is the only temple where it is thought that military-type activities took place, such as the graduation of warriors. This represents a snake with open jaws, which highlights the tongue towards the floor. It is a forked tongue, with two small peaks.
piquitos. Y después los colmillos que se representan.
Then we see its fangs represented by these two bumps in both sides, as you can also see over there. It has an eye, which is this area, and the ear globe, which serpents have. This is an allegory for the warrior who is about to enter, who has earned the right to be in this place.
If we look towards the background, at the back, which is a semicircle, we can see an eagle, which represents the day and the sun. In the back, there's a jaguar with its hands and jaws and its face, representing the night.
They are the people of the sun. They think they are the people chosen to be the sun's representatives on earth. According to their culture, we are the keepers of the sun on its daily journey. So, the sun rises in the day because we provide it with food and drink. At night, the sun holds a great battle against the underworld, and so it is our task to provide it with food so that it rises again the next day. Since they believed that this really happened, they began to undertake wars in order to get blood from sacrifices to provide food for the sun.
This monument is dedicated to the day and the night. At midday, the sun would enter through the zenith. At the top of this roof, there was a hole, so that when the sun rose, it would cast light on one of the three snakes that are found inside the semicircular altar. As the sun advanced, at midday, it shone on the central figure, the eagle sculpture at the center, and in the afternoon, the sun illuminated the third eagle.
At the moment, the monolithic temple of Malinalco is the one under closest surveillance. It has fissures, naturally cracking from the hill, and naturally, rain falls over it. We are very concerned at the moment, and are doing our best efforts to preserve it, so future generations can inherit these ruins in their best shape possible.
We marvel at the advanced knowledge of these people. How much of this legacy is still alive today in the American continent? How do the new generations continue to study and understand the sun? To answer these questions, we travel to Bogota, Colombia. One of the most modern planetariums in Latin America operates here, carrying out valuable educational work amongst children.
Pensando por dónde es que sale el sol para podernos ubicar bien. ¿Por dónde sale el sol? Oriente, excelente. Desde Colombia vemos el cielo del sur y el cielo del norte. Vemos todo el cielo. Los indígenas se reunían en torno a esto para poder hacer sus rituales y poder medir la hora. Ya casi se produce la sombra, mírenla. Esa sería la sombra.
In ancient times, it seemed that everything rotated around us, including the sun. It seemed that we were the center of the world. For example, the ancient cosmological models were geocentrical. Because that was what our senses indicated, that was our first experience. Of course, nowadays, we know that we are not the center of the solar system. Our planet rotates around the sun, and the sun is not even the center of anything, since it also rotates around the galaxy, which we call the Milky Way.
Miramos hacia el norte y si estiramos la mano hacia el oriente, lo siento, Samu, hacia el oriente, ese puntito del oriente, el sol sale por ahí solamente el 21 de marzo y el 21 de septiembre. Solamente esos días. ¿En tu cumpleaños? Eso se llama equinoccio. Y si sale por allá, el sol, miren lo que hace. Se hace así, ay, y se oculta por el occidente y ese pedacito se llama Trópico de Capricornio.
The sun is one of the most admired stars in all the mythologies around the world. The roles it plays is evident. As a giver of life, a giver of light and energy, it has always had the role as a male entity of energy, strength, and light, the creator.
Este tiende a venir hacia acá. Entonces esas son las 9. Y miren que para que se mueva una hora, el sol tiene que moverse en el cielo 15 grados.
Cuando el sol llega al norte son las 12 del día.
Esa es una excelente pregunta. Háganse acá en círculo alrededor de nuestro gnomo. Y sabes que para calcular que este reloj de sol nos sirva perfectamente para todo el año, sí tiene que pasar a las 12 justamente por el norte. Y miren que si hacemos esa lineecita otra vez, el sol sale por el 21 de junio por allá y se mueve así como hacia el norte y se oculta por el occidente, ese caminito que hizo es el Trópico de Cáncer.
The sunrise on certain key dates of the year are still celebrated throughout the continent. Its origin goes back hundreds or thousands of years. One of the most exciting and breathtaking ceremonies takes place in Tiwanaku, Bolivia, on the winter solstice of the southern hemisphere.
We stand at the northern area of the Puerta del Sol. What we are seeing here is the main part of this temple, which there are 3 important temples that are mainly astronomically oriented. That is, from north to south, east to west. The sun gate served as a calendar for the people of Tiwanaku. Since here, there are 4 seasons, mainly 21st of June, which for us represents the Andean Amazon New Year. On this day, the sun rises in the morning and connects with the Sun Gate Temple. For tomorrow, we're expecting many visitors. Yet, people have started arriving to Guagui since 10 p.m. Tiwanaku is a main gathering place for people, since these temples are full of energy and people come to receive that energy since early in the morning. That is why we'll start to see people enter at 5 a.m.
celebra el Año Nuevo Aymara andino amazónico.
The New Year for the Aymara Andean Amazon people is celebrated in Tahuanacu. It represents the cultural center for mankind, where really all the indigenous authorities have celebrated the return of the sun, the Willikakuti, for about 5,521 years. This tradition has been carried out throughout the years up until today.
O kanawa sui tastanaka machak tiempo sasa. Stanoa. Uka castellanaronos stanoa. Uchapan, paz, tranquilidad, libertad, armonía.
We believe that the sun's rays provide energy in this place, what we call Acapana, the Kalasasaya temple. So when one lifts one's hands with a lot of faith, one receives the sun's energy, which gives strength to the human being. So this is what we are celebrating at this time.
Es una fecha importante para las culturas.
It is an important date for the cultures in our country, particularly for indigenous cultures.
Pastoreo han requerido de conocer exactamente
For
estos.
thousands of years, these groups have practiced agriculture and raised animals, so they need to know exactly the cycle of the seasons, on which date these seasons begin and end, the time for harvesting, for planting, in order to manage their agriculture.
De siembra, etc. Muchos países, incluso de la región que nos rodean,
Many countries, even neighboring countries, have not managed to keep this cultural value. This cultural wealth and diversity that Bolivia has kept, as well as our ability for living together within this diversity. Most countries have committed a sort of cultural suicide because they've decided to reject, to cast aside their pre-colonial origins and their indigenous identity.
Su identidad indígena.
El fuego ha traído al hombre.
Fire has fascinated mankind since ancient times, and the sun has always been associated with fire. For a long time, astronomers, out of ignorance about the source of the sun's energy, thought that the sun was a bonfire, like the one we have here. However, in the middle of the 19th century, when they started taking measurements, imagine if the sun were a bonfire, The sun is enormous. It has over 330,000 times more matter than Earth. If the sun were entirely made of coal or sticks, it would burn for only 150 years. Nowadays, we know that the sun will live for another 5 billion years. The sun's fuel, which is composed of hydrogen, is not burnt throughout the sun. It only burns in the core. The sun's engine is in its core, in the nucleus, the heart of the sun. There, it burns at 15 million degrees and will burn oxygen into helium for another 5 billion years. One of the most peculiar aspects of the sun is that it's not a solid ball, nor a liquid ball. The sun is a cloud of gas, a huge globe of gas. In theory, one could go right through the sun. Of course, the sun's temperature is 6,000 degrees in the visible part, but its core, it burns at 15 million degrees.
The last stop on our trip through Iberoamerica takes us to the Canary Islands in Spain. Here, an international team of researchers tries to unravel the mysteries of the sun using state-of-the-art technology.
The Tate Observatory was the first site of what nowadays is known as the Astrophysics Institute of the Canary Islands. It is a unique place with exceptional conditions for astronomy. Pioneer groups from Europe realized that there were unique conditions here to install large telescopes within European soil, without going further than Europe. Convinced by the quality of the skies in the Canary Islands, Germans built the first solar telescopes, then the Swedish, and later the British, who have a very ancient and important tradition in astronomy. They started to install their telescopes on this island.
Our planet constantly suffers the onslaught of large solar flares and violent eruptions. What risk do we run? Is it likely that life could end due to these enormous explosions? To answer these questions, a new solar telescope called Gregor was built in Teta. It is one of the largest telescopes of its kind in the world.
Gregor is a state-of-the-art solar telescope with the most advanced instrumentation available for solar astrophysics. It combines a light structural design, a large, almost 5-foot telescope to study the sun. One must bear in mind that the sun shines very brightly, and sometimes we have too many photons coming from the sun. These photons, this light, produces a lot of heat in the system. Therefore, it is not a good idea to build very large solar telescopes. The mirror, shall we say the eye of this telescope, has a diameter of 1 meter and is the third largest in the world. And the technology behind it, that is, the eyes that will analyze this light, are also extremely advanced instruments. As we change the filter with which we observe the sun, we see other aspects of the sun. Specifically, we can see that there's a layer above the visible layer of the sun, which is very dim, and constant activity takes place there. The sun is constantly changing. In a question of seconds, of minutes, there are explosions, eruptions, huge quantities of gas and particles are ejected toward the interplanetary environment, reaching Earth. The sun is really alive.
Observations carried out in Theta led to the discovery that the sun is constantly expanding and contracting in the same way that a human heart beats. But unlike a person's heart beating at around 60 times per minute, the sun beats every 5 minutes. It seems that our mother star is full of life. No wonder the sun has aroused such respect and adoration from ancient times to this day.
Right now, I am aligning the silostat so it can be placed inside the room. Well, the sun is reflected on this primary flat mirror and then onto the secondary mirror. The sun without magnification in its real size. Then I place it in line with the telescope's tube inside the room. Basically, what we are doing here is to study the behavior of sunspots along a solar cycle, within the maximum range of a solar cycle, which is every 11 years. Sunspots are like volcanoes, so there are eruptions towards outer space. Not like on Earth, for example, where we see the volcanoes forming and expelling lava, but they generally keep their external shape. There is usually a peak and smoke comes out, like in a chimney. This is a sunspot. It deforms and breaks the photosphere. It's plasmatic fluid, and all this matter is thrown outside the sun. Sunspots are found and produced around the sun's tropics. In other words, if this is the equator, at certain latitudes of the sun, that's where the birth, development, and death of sunspots takes place.
Here we are in the observer room of the telescope, at the very bottom of the telescope. And as I said, here we can see the big sunspot I am observing right here at the moment. And you can see it looks like an eye. Yeah? Here we have the dark part of the sunspot where we have big magnetic fields. And here we have the surroundings where this hot gas plasma, it's 6,000 Kelvin or degrees hot, is pushed away from the magnetic field.
Those flames of matter eventually break apart in the sun, since they are huge and release wind and acceleration of particles. We are watching an explosion. The light takes a few minutes to reach the Earth, but these particles are traveling at a very high speed, but even so, they take between 1 to 4 days to reach Earth. Earth could not be inhabited if we did not have an atmosphere, because these waves, these solar winds with particles and radiation would not allow life on Earth. In other planets, life is not possible, but Earth has an atmosphere that protects us. There is a magnetic field over the Earth. There is a geographic North Pole and a South Pole. Earth is like a magnet. Therefore, the magnetic shielding of Earth and the atmosphere's shield protects us from impacts. But as I say, these phenomena liberate such an enormous amount of energy that it is difficult for humans to grasp. These arches that we see in the sun are composed by matter that amounts to a magnitude of 10 Earths. Let us remember that the sun's diameter could hold 100 globes the size of the Earth. Or, for instance, if we could open up the sun at the top and throw balls inside, equivalent to the size of the Earth, it would take 1 million balls to fill the sun. The sun is a star that has piqued the curiosity, wonder, and even fear from all civilizations, from ancient times to this day. They tried to understand why the sun is there, what it did, how did it influence life, and whether it would rise the next day. All of these questions have sparked people's curiosity, which is perhaps the most important weapon that humans have. We have to learn to live with the sun. When we are children, we learn to live with our families. Sometimes in surroundings that we don't like, but we have to learn to live with the family. I think the same applies to the sun.
We know very little about the sun. The behavior of the sun is still a mystery.
To enjoy every sunrise, every sunset, and to watch this star, this fascinating object, and to study it, it really makes you think and question. Yes, I feel a special admiration for my star, the sun, from the knowledge I have gained and what I feel for it. I think it is very important.
Knowing the stars, knowing the celestial bodies, the quest for knowledge satisfies a person's curiosity. To make sense of why we are here on Earth.
The sun is at the center of our small universe, which affects us all. No other phenomena in the cosmos really affects the Earth. The large supernova, galaxies that crash against each other, all of that really does not affect humans. What really affects people is what goes on in our star, the sun. In that sense, the sun is still highly relevant when it comes to mankind.
Right from the first look, people begin to wonder, and then they begin to ask questions.
To me, the reason I enjoy night photography or celestial photography is it kind of puts you in your place. It makes you realize how small you are and how insignificant you are in the universe. And if you had a bad day, the sun still comes up and the moon still comes up.
In this community, there's a very strong relationship with the moon. When a girl first gets her menstrual period, during those first 3 months, she's not allowed to move.
We have to bear in mind that whoever entered this place came either to celebrate or to be sacrificed. There were no other options.
One can say that in this community, the tradition of confinement has been going on for about 200 years.
If I can teach astronomy to 600 cyclists, for me, it's a privilege. Eventually, humans will populate the Milky Way, the galaxy, the universe.
Never before had we encountered such massive evidence of human and animal sacrifice.
The moon is our eternal companion at night, sterile, gray, and apparently unchangeable. Month after month, her image never changes. Her craters and mountains seem to have been there forever. However, her birth was the result of a violent story of transformations, as violent as the human sacrifices that people from pre-Columbian cultures carried out, inspired by the moon itself. Now we know that the moon came into existence as a giant ball of magma. It was created from matter left over from an impact upon Earth about 4.5 billion years ago. The magma started to cool down, forming a crust over the moon's surface. Some 4.3 billion years ago, the south pole of the moon suffered a giant impact, creating the largest crater in the whole solar system. This impact marked the beginning of a period that would greatly transform the surface of the moon. Giant collisions came, one after another, giving shape to the dark regions of the moon, usually known as oceans. Since the moon's core had not completely cooled down, lava started to emerge through the cracks caused by these collisions. Volcanic activity spread lava over the craters, covering them and then cooling down. Due to the high content of iron, lunar oceans reflect less light and therefore they appear darker. About 1 billion years ago, volcanic activity on the visible side of the moon stopped completely. Our natural satellite continued to receive impacts from objects within the solar system, but much smaller than in the first phases. That's how we arrived to the moon as we see it today. She still suffers from impacts, but they are fewer and less frequent. That is why we have the impression that the moon, our moon, is unchangeable, permanent, and eternal, almost like a goddess in the sky, watching over our destiny. We traveled to the north of Peru to discover a pre-Columbian culture that structured their entire lives by the influence of the moon. Our natural satellite was so important to that culture that they raised monumental buildings in its honor. They also held cruel human sacrifices, dedicated to our nocturnal friend that circles the sky. A few miles away from Trujillo, we find Chan Chan. This city began its construction around 1400 AD by the ancient Chimu people, who became the lords of this land. Chan Chan is the largest city made of mud bricks ever built by humans. UNESCO declared it a World Heritage Center.
Chan Chan was the capital of the Chimu Empire. The city had a population of around 100,000 inhabitants. Its reach, during its most successful time in history, was around 8 miles. Within this area, palaces, houses, artisan neighborhoods, parks, graveyards, and obviously temples were built. These temples were dedicated to the adoration of the sea and also to the stars in heaven.
The connection between Chan Chan and the moon fascinates Gabriel and many other researchers in the world. As a society depending on resources from the sea, they possibly worshipped the moon as a giver of life and for her role in regulating the tides. A few miles from Chan Chan, we find the Moon Pyramid, built by the Moche people.
We stand at the front of the Great Temple of the Moon in the Moche Valley, in the northern coast of Peru. This facade is a source of pride and evidence of great achievement. Imagine, around 1,500 years ago, when high buildings were not usual, to find a structure of this size, this stature, in the middle of the desert, and with such a huge investment, not only in public works, but also in man-hours, as well as in art. This is telling us that it was built to dominate and that at the same time, it was meant to impress. We must bear in mind that any person entering this building came here to either celebrate or to be sacrificed. There were no other options. Therefore, I believe the impression it generated, not only among the people who worked and lived here, but also among the people who came here in a religious context. It was a feeling of admiration, fear, respect, and at the same time, mystery. Here, we are at the lowest end in the main square of the Huaca of the Moon, and we are facing the mural paintings of the myths. It is called that because this place summarizes 3 natural elements that are always associated with the Mochina culture. The first is the element of nature. There are several animals and plants represented here. The second element is that there are human beings painted in different actions and, above all, in different roles. There are warriors, there are possibly priests, fishermen. There are even goldsmiths in the lower side. And the third part is that we have a cosmic element. We have a series of icons representing stars and planets. At the center of all this image composition, it is very clear that the moon gravitates in the middle and has been placed there intentionally. The moon as an element that gravitates. Because for pre-Hispanic cultures in Peru, the moon was believed to be more powerful than the sun for 2 reasons. First, because the moon appeared at night with great strength and the sun did not. Second, the moon had the power to appear both at daytime and at night. While the sun started a stellar journey that covered the entire kingdom during the day, but disappeared at night, and therefore the moon triumphed over the sun. For this reason, the moon has always been seen by local cultures as a more powerful body. Both the Huaca of the sun and the Huaca of the moon are perfectly oriented towards the north, which means that they were probably associated to a constellation, possibly Orion, which is a star that appears from the north. With the temple facing the north, one can easily keep track of the east-west trajectory that the moon follows during the night, and that the sun follows during the day. The recurring events guided by the stars were very important for this culture.
We travel with Gabriel to an archaeological excavation site in the surroundings of Trujillo. Gabriel has been told that there are bodies of children buried in these sacred grounds. We'll try to find the skeletons. Finding these remains is one way to develop an insight of the life led by the ancient inhabitants of this land, and their relationship with the moon and the stars thousands of years ago.
Vamos a continuar con las excavaciones en esta zona, así que vamos a hacer la unidad un 2x2 para continuar con lo que hemos estado haciendo en estos últimos tiempos.
Perfecto.
¿Sí?
Okay.
Vamos sacando los clavos.
We are on the Huanchaquito, at the site called Gramalote. This is 3,000 years old, before present times. This site really constitutes one of the first settlements of fishermen in the area, and also the place of origin of the idea of worshipping the sea and the stars, as well as the idea of worshipping the moon. In fact, we have found here a settlement of fishermen who were experts at catching sharks, as well as processing all the resources that the sea provided. What is interesting is that here, where we stand, we found a small temple, probably the temple belonging to the fishermen's village. And this village is perfectly aligned with the constellation of the Southern Cross.
Ya, vamos a comenzar a abrochar este sector de acá. Toda esta parte aquí.
What's interesting is that the Southern Cross is very important for fishermen, since it helps as a point of reference throughout the year, as well as to determine the fishing seasons. This is a fishing village from the early period, so we are speaking in the range of 1500 BC. That is 3,000 years ago, approximately. In these villages, the idea of marine divinities emerges, the worship, the use and the exploitation of marine resources, which, in time, will lead to the development of the social complexity that we have seen in places such as the Huaca de la Luna, from the Moche culture, or the Chan Chan site in the Chimu culture.
Parece que es de hueso trabajado. Sí. Por el ancho que tiene el mallero, pareciera que se hubiera hecho para crear redes de tamaño intermedio como los peces que estamos encontrando en las excavaciones. Esto vamos a registrarlo y lo vamos a ubicar como hallazgo en este sector.
Ok, el contexto. Estamos en el sector oeste.
No, parece que esta zona definitivamente es una vivienda de pescadores, porque estamos encontrando varios elementos. Wow.
Wow, mira. Anzuelo.
Es un anzuelo trabajado.
Wow, mira otro.
Oh, mira.
Mira.
Ajá. A ver.
Mira, wow.
Este está más
increíble.
grande.
Ese es más grande.
Mira, definitivamente son anzuelos de
hueso.
hueso.
Mira, acá se nota la impronta del hilo para amarrarlo, ¿no?
Sí, definitivamente sí. Ahí está. De hecho, pareciera que han demorado bastante tiempo en hacerlo. Mira, hacer un objeto como este
requiere bastante esfuerzo y trabajo.
Y con herramientas tan rudimentarias, definitivamente toma tiempo.
Claro. Wow, no cabe duda que estamos ante un sitio, una vivienda de pescadores bien marcada.
Definitivamente.
Claro.
Up to the present time, we have communities of fishermen who are direct descendants from these groups of people. Because up to this day, we have fishermen and their families traditionally living in this area. For example, they associate the full moon to a species of fish known here as cachema. And coincidentally, each time there's a full moon, this fish, for some reason, comes near the surface and it is easier to catch, probably attracted by the light of the moon, or some other factor. And this is a phenomenon that takes place up to this day.
According to history, the Chimus appeared on this beach in 1238. They made a living from fishing, guided only by the stars. And they were excellent navigators. The little reed horseboats? They first started using these in 1238. And to this day, the fishing methods used by the Chimus has not changed at all. The fishermen currently follow the same practice. The system for fishing remains the same. They would look at the moon and say, "Now the moon is turning. The moon is full now. it will happen. And after dawn, they would also go fishing. They would gaze at the sky and watch the speed with which the sky moved. And they knew the sea currents they would encounter.
What is the mystery behind the moon's influence over the ocean? During the day, the level of the sea rises and falls, due mainly to the force of gravity of the moon over the Earth. The highest tides, namely spring tides, occur twice a month, coinciding with the new moon and the full moon. This is when the sun and the moon are on a straight line with the Earth, and its gravitational attraction adds up. The low tides, or neap tides, occur during the crescent moon and the waning moon, when the sun and the moon are on a right angle with the Earth, counteracting the attraction.
We are trying to build a future where this tradition is preserved, because I think it is very valuable for the history of our people. A tool for fishing like this is extremely important. This is the only part in the world where this type of boat is used. So all the fishermen who come this way, they keep on using the same little reed boat, the same everything, the same way of manufacturing, of using it to fish, since the beginning of the tradition, dating back to 1238.
We are in the middle of the excavation process, in the Llamas, south of Gramalote. Here we have found, up till now, over 30 children, victims of sacrifice, and around 40 llamas, but there are probably many more. At the moment, we are digging what appears to be the skull of a child, and always next to a camelid. One can clearly see the perfectly well-preserved muscle, and some of the bones, probably part of a tail. And here one can see the dark brown color of the llama, while in this area we have the child with his hair, the hair and some textile. There's probably another individual, another child buried in this area also. Here we have very clear evidence of a massive offering, where the sacrificed parties were the children and the camelids. This finding has many implications for archaeology. The most important of all is that the degree of preservation of the bodies and the degree of preservation of the fibers in the camelidae and the humans will allow us to understand issues that were never even dreamt of. Never before had we encountered such massive evidence of human and animal sacrifice. Practically all the children were placed both physically, that is, their body and their eyes, with their heads turned on purpose facing the sea. While the llamas were turned on purpose, both their necks and their heads, toward the east, that is, facing the mountains. Another thing we noticed is that in general, in burial grounds or graveyards of the Chimu culture, even the most simple graves have some pottery or some necklaces made from seashells or other elements. In this case, these children did not have any funerary offerings, besides the llamas. These children had suffered from a very clear cut around the sternum, or breastbone, with the aim most probably of breaking the thorax box and opening the ribs, probably to take something out. And the only visible organ in this area of the body that we can think of is the heart.
If we could travel back in time to the period in which these children who were sacrificed lived, we would find a disturbing and moving scene on the shores of the sea.
¿Qué número de individuos son estos?
Aquí tenemos el 34.
Y acá está el 33.
We have to start by estimating their age, so we shall work with their teeth. We will work with the bone joint. Here in the laboratory of the Museum of the Chanchan site, located around half a mile away from the place where the 43 children and 74 llamas were found, we analyzed the remains of some of the individuals who were sacrificed. As you can see, the level of preservation of the remains is quite good, especially when it comes to the organic material.
La evidencia más directa que tenemos de sacrificios humanos.
The most obvious evidence linked to human sacrifices through these remains is a very clear incision down the central part of the breastbone. Here you can clearly see the mark where the sternum was broken into 2 parts, and sometimes in 3 parts. That cut can also be seen here, indicating that once the breastbone was broken, the ribs could be opened, gaining access into the area where the heart is found. The fact that there is a high number of children and teenagers in such a limited space might indicate that this was a burial ground exclusively for individuals of this age. However, the strategic layout of the bodies, always in a south-north position, and their skulls with the children's gaze facing the sea, indicates that whoever planned this had a very clear purpose in mind. This was a sacrifice offered to a divinity, probably to the moon, that ruled over the tides and the temperature of the ocean, according to the Chimu vision and ideas. This particular sacrifice was carried out in an open space, in front of the sea. Once more, this indicates that pre-Hispanic cultures were not only focused on building great cities, but that they also paid particular attention to the natural landscape that surrounded them, giving it a very high symbolic value.
Centuries after the priests sacrificed dozens of children, the fascination with the moon is still alive. We travel to California to accompany a group of amateur photographers obsessed with obtaining the best possible images of the moon. The occasion is perfect. Our trip to San Francisco coincides with the arrival of the supermoon, when our satellite looks larger on the horizon due to its close proximity to Earth.
My name is Phil McGrew. I live in San Francisco. I'm an amateur photographer. My passion is night photography, and I like to specialize in moon photography, solar photography, star trails, and things like that. Night photography appeals to me. I think I can get longer exposures. The colors are more vibrant. I just enjoy the different feel that the night gives you. The shadows are different and less significant, and there's stars, and I think when you do night photography, especially if you can capture stars or moon or something like that, then it just gives you a sense that you're part of something larger. You're not just walking down the sidewalk of the city. You're living on Earth, and there's a moon 250 million miles away. It just kind of puts you in your place a little bit. But my passion is moon photography, and I try to go out every month and take moon photographs. This is probably the hardest photo I've taken. This is about a 3/4 moon, and this is the International Space Station flying across the moon. And we were lucky there was no fog that day, and normally along the coast there's fog. And tonight is a supermoon, which is a little bit overhyped. The supermoon is about maybe 10 to 12% larger than a normal moon. My plan, since the moon rises in the east, my plan is to find a location in the west where I can see it rise over Coit Tower. And so the fog is supposed to stay clear and maybe roll in later after the shot. So in the summertime, we get more fog than we do in other seasons. So it's really difficult to get full moon photographs in the summer, but I think we're going to be lucky and get a shot this time. Sometimes you try to find some less popular spots, where not everybody's going to be there, So a lot of people will be up in the Marin Headlands tonight. There are fewer people will be down here. So yeah, you try to outsmart your friends every now and then and try to go to a spot maybe they didn't think of. So it's kind of fun to do that. To the left of Coit Tower right now, so it should come up. It's kind of satisfying because our calculations were correct. We thought this was a spot, but there's so many variables, so we're kind of happy to see it. I just wish it were a little darker. The size of the moon compared to the city right now is really, really big. To me, the reason I enjoy night photography or celestial photography is it kind of puts you in your place. It makes you realize how small you are and insignificant you are in the universe, and if you had a bad day, the sun still comes up and the moon still comes up. I mean, that's 250 million miles away. I mean, and it orbits our planet, and it orbits with great predictability, and we know where it's going to be and when it's going to be there. And cultures 5,000 years ago knew where the moon was going to be and where the sun was going to be, and they've built temples and pyramids and things like that. And it's just amazing to think that this knowledge has existed for thousands of years, and that the significance that this has played in cultures and religions and ceremonies and things like that is just, it's fascinating.
This initiative started a year ago, out of the desire to ride bicycles by night around this hill. Somehow we had the idea that a certain infrastructure was required to ride at night, such as streetlights, but the truth is, there is an underlying principle of environmental sustainability, related to the fact that the world needs unlit spaces. The world is becoming polluted by light, and somehow this is an oasis, a space free of artificial lights, which is hard as the city grows and more lights are added. The idea of cycling under the stars was born about a year ago. And now we have a cycling under the moon event, and as an original idea evolves, it has more of a poetical connection, a relationship with poetry, with the universe. We choose the idea of cycling under the moon for today's event, since there was a full moon yesterday. And it is nice that so many people have showed up. It is also good that everybody comes here with a good discipline. I believe that it is an event that can also influence people's attitudes.
My name is Marcelo Tala, and I'm an astronomy major from Chile's Catholic University. My enthusiasm is focused on that area, to conduct outreach on astronomy topics and influence as many people as possible, within my potentials. So everybody knows that we have a huge telescopes, access to the magnificent northern skies, and even, just standing here, we are able to observe celestial objects. We had the opportunity to see the full moon, constellations, and more. So basically, our goal is to bring astronomy to people. That's really where our motivation lies. Because, for instance, people are used to seeing the moon, and they watch it from the city, but all of a sudden, they see it through the telescope, and they rediscover it. And then, their reaction is, ah, right? They realize that the moon is not just a white ball with a gray spot in the middle. They can now see that it has craters, and then they begin to ask, hey, how are these craters formed? Why does the moon appear to be like that? And that's the nice part of interacting with people. Right from the first look, people begin to wonder, and then they begin to ask questions. It invites people to think. If I can teach astronomy to 600 cyclists, for me, it's a privilege to be there and spread all that knowledge that I have. To share my knowledge with people so that they too know why the moon is at that distance, how it came to be, where do stars come from.
I believe there is a relationship with the universe, the stars and the moon across all human cultures.
The next stop on our journey in search of the mysteries of the moon is Mexico City. At the heart of this crowded megacity lies the Grand Temple, the religious and ceremonial center of the great Aztec or Mexica Empire, a place where politics, religion, economy, and knowledge of the stars are intertwined as an indivisible whole. In this place, rich in history and heritage, we meet Mexican astronomer Julieta Fierro, who explains the importance of the moon in keeping time.
We're at a multi-purpose site used by the Mexicas prior to the European conquest of Mexico. All of the archaeological sites had multiple purposes. They were used as places of worship, power centers, markets. These archaeological sites also could be used as clocks or places for timekeeping. It is very difficult to give time a definition, to really know what it is. However, what we really know how to do is keep track of it. For all cultures around the planet, the transition of day to night constitutes the basis of timekeeping, and that's the first way. The second way is by counting the phases of the moon. Every 29.5 days, the moon becomes full. Then it wanes until it becomes a new moon. This cycle constitutes a month. I'm going to compare it to the regular, currently used calendar so that everyone can understand the original calendar. There were nights and days, and the month was the lunar calendar. There were about 30 days in a month. And the seasons would repeat themselves every 360 days. This means that there were 12 months of 30 days each in a 360-day year. And in fact, all the cultures had to make an adjustment for the leap year, because it's a little more than 360 days. So each culture invented its own way of making this adjustment.
The next stop in our journey is Colombia, where we meet a producer of documentary films who has maintained an important tradition concerning the moon.
I am Priscilla Padilla, a Colombian producer of documentary films. I've just completed a documentary film called The Eternal Night of the 12 Moons. My work has always revolved around the subject of women. The Eternal Night of the 12 Moons is the story of an indigenous Wayuu girl. The Wayuu are an indigenous culture that live by the Caribbean Sea north of Colombia. That's where this story takes place. When a girl reaches womanhood, she is sent to confinement in a hut of wood and mud, which is built specifically for her. In this community, there's a very strong relationship with the moon. All women, when pregnant, enjoy taking moonlight baths. And when a girl gets her first menstrual period, for the first 3 months, she's not allowed to move. In the middle of the Guajiro region, I came across this girl, Filia Rosa Uriana, with whom we made this documentary film. I believe that in this community of Fili, the women still maintain this tradition of confinement. And I can say that for about 200 years, the women have still maintained this tradition. The confinement is a sacred ritual for the Wayuu culture. This tradition consists of the confinement of the girl, once she gets her first menstrual period, in a special hut set apart for her. As soon as the girl enters the hut, she's placed in a hammock, or chinchorro. The chinchorro, or hammock, is the bed for the Wayuu. After around 15 days of lying in the hammock, she gets her first bath with very cold water. It is very important to take moonlight baths, since the moon for the Wayuu culture represents the feminine power. It's believed that the moon strengthens a woman's body.
The last stop on our journey in search of the moon is in Houston, Texas.
This is the Saturn V, one of the vehicles designed to fly to the moon. These are very big and powerful rockets, all of which use chemical fuel. They use hydrogen and liquid oxygen to work. They store enormous quantities of fuel, which is used up very quickly. The first stage lasts only about 2.5 minutes. The second stage also lasts a very short time, enough to give adequate impulse to the vehicle and place it into orbit. The third stage sets the vehicle in a path known as translunar trajectory. This means that the vehicle is ejected from its orbit around Earth and into a path towards the moon. All these pieces break apart from the vehicle, and stage after stage, the vehicle becomes smaller until the only piece that reaches the moon is the upper section. This is made up of the service module, the lunar module, and the landing axis, the control panel. The actual capsule, it's very narrow, a very small thing. The astronauts were able to fit and live there, but the trip to the moon only lasted 3 days, so it wasn't a very long expedition. There's people who still don't believe that we reached the moon. Well, there's also people who still believe that the world is flat, right? There's people who don't believe that some things are true, but there's not much we can do about them. It's a small group of people which has these beliefs. but we still have to respect their beliefs, even if they're incorrect. The Lunar Project was an extraordinarily successful program. It's an extremely important chapter in space history for the United States and for the world. It's a chapter that we need to close and start a new chapter with new technologies, more interesting adventures, bigger and more beautiful, more plentiful. And we need to reach even more distant places. Eventually, humans will populate the Milky Way, the galaxy, the universe. We hope that humans will continue to expand their horizons. It's part of perhaps our final destiny in a more cosmic way. And our descendants will, at some point, reach the stars.
Venus is a very important goddess for South Americans and Mayans.
Well, people have lived in this region for over 10,000 years, in the Mojave Desert region and the Death Valley region.
Today, a planetary conjunction will take place. We'll be able to see Jupiter, Venus, and Mercury.
I just fell in love with the vast, large landscape. The fact that you can be in such a place and feel so small.
It's a human need to search beyond one's own self in this enormous universe.
So I'm just giving you the answers to what you can do to make the world sustainable for everyone.
Venus is the second planet in our solar system in order of distance from the Sun. It has been named after the Roman goddess of love. It is also known as the sister planet to Earth, since it is similar in size, mass, and composition. The Mariner 2 space probe was the first space mission to explore this planet. On December 14, 1962, it flew over the surface of Venus at an altitude of 34,800 kilometers. This was the first successful interplanetary mission, the first time humankind managed to get a probe to another planet. The instruments in Mariner 2 revealed a real inferno on Venus, measuring temperatures that reached over 420 degrees Celsius, rendering life impossible. If we were to set foot on Venus, it would not be an enjoyable experience. After the Moon, Venus is the brightest object in the night sky, always appearing near the Sun at dusk and dawn. Since ancient times, its brightness has aroused our curiosity and imagination. Venus is usually associated with the feminine mystique as well as with the concept of beauty. In the capital city of Chile, we are attending the premiere of a play that explores these issues.
My name is Aravina Soto. I'm an actress, and I'm 30 years old. This play is called Venus in Furs, and it's about a theater director named Thomas. He's a rather conceited fellow and is desperately looking for a leading lady for his next play. The director has a preconceived image of the actress. He thinks she should be silly and foolish, an actress who is not feminine, but dresses up to look feminine. She's gaudy, as if she were a helium trip, as he says. And then a girl called Vanda arrives, and she's strangely similar to the character that he's looking for. She seems very silly, but in the end, she is more clever than he. And she turns the casting around completely to show him that women are more than their appearance.
Bien dicho. Pero sospecho que hay más detrás de su fascinación por la piel que una simple estética renacentista.
Venus is a Roman goddess. In Greece, she was known as Aphrodite, the goddess of beauty, fertility, and femininity. Aphrodite has been used widely in literature, the arts, and music. Even though they always used these terms to represent the goddess of love and femininity, they always related it to the body. And this bothers me because women are more than that. We also think we're intelligent. We're not just a body. The old concept of beauty was very different from what it is nowadays. Women are more voluptuous, with more curves, plumper, pinker, and healthier. Our current concept of beauty is created by television, graphics, and magazines. The models are painfully thin, not very healthy looking at all.
Usted conoció íntimamente a mi estola y ustedes dos solo acaban de conocerse.
My relationship with the sky started when I was a young child. I grew up in a place where the stars could be seen very clearly. One could follow the cycles of the moon. I got a map of the stars as a gift, and I learned the name of each constellation. And I was always very keen to watch what was above me. I think it is a need we humans have to search beyond one's own self in this enormous universe.
Our trip to discover the secrets of Venus continues in Mexico, in the Maya area known as Chichen Itza. The Mayans developed an exquisite knowledge of Venus. For many generations, the priests observed and kept careful records of the passage of this star, which enabled them to calculate and predict the movement of Venus in the sky. This knowledge was left for posterity, reflected in monumental buildings, such as the Temple of Kukulkan.
This site is the result of the merger of two culturally different groups. The local Mayans mixed with groups that came from the center of Mexico. This happened around the year 1000. The architecture here is a blend of both. Especially with this pyramid, the largest and tallest in the city. We can see there are many elements connected to observing the sky. It has many elements that make it unique.
Jesus Galindo uses several instruments to measure the alignment of this monumental building with the sky.
For over 25 years, I have been interested in studying the sky from a cultural point of view. At first, it was quite difficult to move beyond what astronomy gave me. Astronomy measures, calculates, verifies, and still the question remains, why? This is the axis of symmetry upwards, up to there. There you can see the middle point of the door that should match with this point. It is a coincidence.
According to research carried out by Jesus, the Kukulkan temple was built taking into account the sky and their knowledge of the stars, giving shape to a giant stone calendar that marked the passage of time for the Mayans.
Whoever ordered this built directed that it should be oriented to reflect these calendar elements. This clearly indicates that they wanted to show their work on Earth concurred with the sacred principles of the calendar.
The Maya ruled every detail of their lives through several calendars in parallel. The solar calendar of 365 days, as well as the sacred ritual calendar of 260 days, which was related to the position of Venus over the sky. The Maya even knew that Venus and the Sun would be located exactly in the same position in the sky every 8 years.
No other people in Mesoamerica were able to develop a system similar to this. A beginning and then counting time, day after day. Moreover, their inscriptions, besides having so many days to identify the date, also provided information on the solar calendar and the phases of the moon. If the lunar month had 29 or 30 days, we know now it is 29 and a half, don't we? Well, it is an over-elaborated way of setting a moment in time. It is an exceptional feature of the Mayans, and, in this sense, they can be called the people of time.
Venus was the patron of war, marking periods for combat and sacrifice. When Venus shone in the sky, its appearance was considered dangerous since it returned from darkness, a place inhabited by the dead. And since Venus is never far away from the Sun, the Maya also linked Venus with the Sun as a kind of divine twin sister.
Around the equinoxes, on March 21st and September 21st, the position of the setting sun causes the 9 bodies of the pyramid to project their shadow over the railing of the north steps of the castle. It takes shape about 1 hour before the sun sets over the horizon. Then, on the top, a triangle appears, and then another, and another. There are 7 triangles that appear, and the last one coincides with the back of the serpent's head. It gives an illusion that this is a serpent of light and stone, which is the crucial moment of the event. This is associated with the fact that the pyramid is dedicated to Quetzalcoatl. the feathered serpent. The head of stone here clearly has a skin of feathers. Kukulkan is a literal translation of Quetzalcoatl. Quetzalcoatl, which is located in Nahuatl, is the center of Mexico, means a feathered serpent. This identifies Venus as the morning star, just before sunrise. The Quetzalcoatl deity is extremely important to Mesoamerica. Legend says that once the ancient gods invented the calendar and time counting, other gods, such as Quetzalcoatl, gave this knowledge as a gift to mankind. So Quetzalcoatl not only is connected to Venus, but also to keeping track of time.
Near the temple of Kukulkan, there is another monumental building that reflects the importance of Venus for the Mayans. This building, which is currently in ruins, would have served to mark the position of Venus and other objects in the sky.
It is one of the most important and interesting buildings in this city. Since archaeological exploration started, due to its architecture, it was called the observatory. But its shape came about by chance. Originally a cylindrical building, over time it started to crumble, leaving the top with the appearance of a modern observatory. But they made it clear what this is all about. The building has 4 entrances with a spiral-shaped staircase on top. That's why it's called El Caracol, the snail. Interestingly, they measured the line itself as defined by architectural elements present here on the site. A line connecting this angle of the jambeau with the outside corner, so that if we stand in a certain place, we would see a slit which might be aligned with something in the sky.
The whole architecture of El Caracol was designed to mark key positions of Venus in the sky. Therefore, life on Earth was magically connected with the gods up there in the heavens. The Maya astronomers knew with great precision on which day Venus would appear through the west. Considering the available technology, their knowledge of mathematics and astronomy is remarkable. The counterpart to this sophisticated development was the high costs that people had to pay. Their fear of Venus was such that when it reappeared in the morning, the Maya would cover their chimneys so that any light shed into their homes would not harm them.
Here, we have another example of that oblique line, which joins 2 jambeaux through the same opening. This one points northeast. But if we walk here, we can see it points northwest. So these oblique lines are related to the furthest position of the moon, or the furthest position of Venus when it rises. So there is a great range of possibilities. At a given moment, there is an optical coincidence between the brightest object in the sky with the brightest object in the night, beside the moon, the quasi-stellar object point, which is a planet. According to historian Fray Bernardino de Sahagún, in central Mexico, the sun is the ultimate expression of sacredness. That is, God means sun. So the sun was a universal deity throughout Mesoamerica, which coincides with the fact that Venus was also a goddess and was followed in detail through observations, in great detail, in the Codex. It is a very important coincidence. Now, what did they really have in mind? We don't know.
Estamos enfrente del castillo.
We're standing in front of the castle. This small platform was called the Venus platform since its discovery, due to the reliefs that can be seen here in the panels. It represents, according to similar symbols found inside, how Mayans may have displayed what is known as commensurability of the period of observations for the Sun and Venus. I believe that the name given to this platform makes sense, because Venus is in many ways represented here. In this panel, Quetzalcoatl, Kukulkan, is depicted as a serpent from whose jaw the face of God would arise. In the left, there are the two figures that symbolically represent Venus as a great star, and on the right, through the glyph of the solar year, the sun.
The Mayans' fascination over Venus, the sun, the moon, and the stars is still alive to this day through several customs and expressions. A group of young people from the Chiapas area started a rock band to communicate the vision of the Maya to the future with words in their native language. They named their group Sac Zavul.
The meaning of Sac-Sebul is lightning. There are two words that refer to this phenomenon. Lightning as light, and thunder is the other word, the Tsauk. So this name, Sac-Sebul, really means Sac, the white light. It is important to rescue our ancient words. Totelmeil, that word refers to father-mother. It means that there is an entity that embodies both aspects, the feminine and the masculine, the balance of our humanity. The Mayan worldview is very different from our Western culture, since in the West, we are taught that the father is the most important figure, the masculine, right? But our world concept had a balance between the masculine and the feminine. That is why the father-mother existed.
I believe in the magic of music very much. When they came here and I heard Damien singing, I couldn't believe it. It made me cry because it simply touched my heart, and I could see the stamp of our ancestors in his music. Also, in our concept of language, the words we use, I like the expression totil in Maya. The expression says that when we're happy, the flowers bloomed in our hearts. We Japanese understand that sort of thing.
So then I tell you, all these terms, we are thinking of bringing them up again. We are resuming these concepts once more, because they are not just words, like in the term saksabul, which means the pure, light that shines, whiteness, the purity of dawn. Of light, as I say. So we are taking up again not only words, but concepts too.
With our music, the message we really want to deliver is that we're all the same. I am very moved when children listen to us and they simply say, "We like your music."
We return to the Yucatan area to explore Uxmal, an ancient Maya city that was established around the 7th century while Europe lived its dark ages, when Constantinople was consolidated as the capital of the Roman Empire in the east. Along with Chichen Itza and Tikal, Uxmal is one of the main archaeological sites of the rich Mayan culture.
We are in the city of Uxmal, a Mayan city of the classic period. This is one of the largest pyramids in the city, called El Adivino, the sorcerer, which represents a very interesting example of architectural style of that era, the Puk style, characterized by lots of stone mosaics.
This imposing building is also known as the Pyramid of the Sorcerer. It is over 30 meters high, and to reach the top, one has to climb hundreds of narrow and very steep steps. Those climbing towards the temple could not lift their head during the ascent, nor turn their back to the gods when descending. With his instruments for astronomical measurement, Jesus investigates the likely alignment of the building with the heavens and the movement of the sun, the stars, and planets, such as Venus. Near the Piramide del Adivino, one finds the governor's palace, which also maintains important secrets about Venus.
This building is one of the largest and most elegant found here. It is unusually long, and all along its length, the top is formed by tridimensional mosaics, inlaid stones carved with different motifs. What is interesting, from an astronomical point of view, is that the figureheads of the god Shak, the Mayan god of rain, which features the crooked nose and eyes at the lower lid, contains the Venus glyph.
Los ojos de cada mascarón abajo, el párpado inferior está ocupado por el glifo de Venus.
That detail originated the idea that the building was associated with Venus. Around 25 years ago, some archaeoastronomer colleagues looked into this matter. The building can be understood very well through the axis of symmetry, the axis that splits the building in half. So if one stands over there, that line goes through the small platform to the cat-like chakmul, with two heads to the horizon. If you measure that line with respect to the north of the sky, you find what is out there. My colleagues determined that this indicates the furthest point where Venus rises, towards the southeast. Well, here we are in an archaeological niche. Here, there is a numerical indication of the relation of this building with Venus, since here, on both sides of this corner, the number 8 clearly appears. A bar of 5 and 3 circles. Approximately every 8 years, with respect to the sky in the background, Venus will be found in the same point. There is no doubt that Venus was important. In the center of Mexico, it is Quetzalcoatl. Here, it is Kukulkan, the feathered serpent, associated with the morning star. In other cultures, the evening star is another body, a twin. The precious feathered serpent is dedicated to Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent of Quetzal. But Coatl, the serpent, also means a twin. That is why the Mexican slang word cuate means brother, like a twin. But really, it means serpent or twin, so it would be the precious twin of Venus. Quetzalcoatl also has a twin, Venus. In the center of Mexico, it is known as Xotl.
In the outskirts of the Chilean capital, we meet an avid fan of sky photography. Today is a very special day, since Venus will appear along with other celestial bodies near twilight, offering a real dance of planets, which we hope to capture.
My name is Michel Lacos, and I'm an amateur astrophotographer. Right now, we are in Lo Barnechea, and we are going to Achaya, the Chilean Association for Astronomy and Astronautics, where there is a good group of people. We'll find all sorts of equipment for astronomy to observe the deep sky. A telescope, binoculars, a wide-angle camera. Today, after sunset, we have a planetary conjunction, and we should be able to see Jupiter, Venus, and Mercury. They'll form a close triangle between them.
My name is Eduardo Latorre, and I'm a partner here in Achaya. I'm building a telescope for a session of astrophotography today. Astrophotography requires quite a lot of equipment and training to capture good images. So one needs to be testing equipment constantly, adjusting. So we are taking advantage of this terrace here in Pochoco to fine-tune the equipment. When one travels to the north in search of dark skies, everything must work perfectly.
This is the hard part of putting the telescope together.
My name is Renan van Vadigad. I'm a director at the Cerro Pochoco Observatory, belonging to the Chilean Association Achaya. I'm installing a telescope with a 105mm diameter refractor to see what we can photograph tonight. Very likely, a well-known global cluster, the largest visible in that area, is Omega Centauri. Why that cluster? Because it is easier with the moon. Today we have the moon and fog, so I think a cluster will be easier than a nebulae, which are difficult to capture under these conditions.
There's a lot of calibrating to balance the equipment with the tripod. Then you direct it to the South Pole. We need a lot of patience for everything to work out well. The ideal thing would be to assemble all of this during the day, and then, at night, just to come and start working, to take the images. But now, I'm going to see if I can take one photograph, at least, of the conjunction over here. Well, right now it is 6 p.m. The sun set around half an hour ago. We're getting ready to take photos of the conjunction of Jupiter with Venus and Mercury, which are very low in the horizon. Unfortunately, right now, there's a thick layer of pollution, but nevertheless, we'll try to take images of the event. One hears about the dance of the planets because they do not follow constant motion with regard to each other. This isn't seen at first sight, but their movement varies, which is why it looks as if they were dancing in the sky, since one planet goes faster and the other slower.
We continue our journey on the Trail of Venus in the United States at a beautiful but hostile national park. We've come to this place because of its resemblance to Venus, especially its high temperature. In fact, according to the World Meteorological Association, Death Valley has the highest recorded temperature in the world, reaching a staggering 57 degrees Celsius. Venus is the hottest planet within our solar system, rendering life on its surface impossible.
My name is Death Valley Jim. I'm an author, explorer, historian of the Mojave Desert in the Death Valley region. Death Valley is located in California and Nevada, with the majority of it being in California. However, we are roughly 50 miles from the city of Las Vegas, Nevada. Well, Death Valley was named by the Jayhawkers, which was a group that came across the United States in 1849. They were making their way to the gold fields in Northern California. They just kind of stumbled upon Death Valley by accident. They took a wrong turn on the route that they were supposed to take, thinking that this was a shortcut. They got stranded here. A member of the party had actually died in the valley, and that is how they came to the name of Death Valley. It's quoted that one of the ladies that was in the party, as leaving the valley, she turned her head and looked away and waved and said, "Goodbye, Death Valley." Oh yes, the conditions are very harsh. There's literally very small amounts of water, and the water that you do find generally can't be drank because it's very salty. The hottest temperature in the world was recorded in Badwater, where we're at today, on July 10th, 1934. The temperature reached 134 degrees Fahrenheit.
The temperature in the surface of Venus exceeds 750 degrees Fahrenheit because its atmosphere is composed primarily of carbon dioxide, producing a thick and toxic air. This results in a huge greenhouse effect, which prevents the sun's heat from escaping into space. If it weren't for this greenhouse effect, temperatures on Venus could be similar to Earth.
Currently probably about 120 degrees outside, and it's a pretty typical summer day at Badwater. It's not a moist heat like a lot of people think, but it's a dry heat. So despite the fact that it's 120, it's still not unbearable. You can still step out of the vehicle, and while you're not comfortable, you're not in absolute agony as well, and you're not dripping with sweat like you might be in other locations. Well, people have lived in this region for over 10,000 years, and different cultures of native people. As far back as the Pinto Basin people and the Coso Range people lived in the Mojave Desert region and the Death Valley region. They left significant amount of rock art in the form of petroglyphs, which is a pecked design, as well as pictographs, which is a painted design on rock formations throughout the area. As well, you can find village sites sometimes that are still intact with rock rings where the natives would make their homes. Also, they would be called sleep circles. Also, grinding slicks and mortar holes where they would grind their food for consumption. Well, it was really just kind of, I came here one time and I just fell in love with the vast, large landscape. The fact that you can be in such a place and feel so small and insignificant because the mountains and the wide open space it just gives you that feeling that, you know, it really puts you into perspective how small you are. That's always kind of a focus point that people always seem to mention to me as well is, wow, how small we are when we're down in the valley.
The greenhouse effect, which transforms Venus into a real inferno of heat, is a warning to us, the inhabitants of Earth. We are filling our air with carbon dioxide, which results in increasing temperatures at a global level. We should all act and contribute before it is too late and our planet becomes uninhabitable. The last stage of our trip takes us to see a dream conceived by Jack Fresco, an engineer and industrial designer. He has created the Venus Project, which seeks to promote a more balanced society in the world. Here in the District of Venus in the United States, this inventor has built prototypes of what he envisions to be the future of our world.
The main aims of the Venus Project is to bring all the nations of the world together and take care of the environment as well as one another. The end of the artificial boundaries that separate people, and to declare all the Earth's resources as a common heritage of all the world's people. If you don't do that, there will always be territorial disputes and arguments. So I'm just giving you the answers to what you can do to make the world sustainable for everyone. The type of energy systems used in the future must be renewable, and they cannot produce any damage to the environment. That would be geothermal energy, the natural heat of the Earth, wind power, solar power, wave power, ocean power. In other words, thermal differences in the ocean, we can generate power. So there are many possible sources of power that are clean and renewable. I designed the Venus Project to attempt to build a world that's sustainable. And in it, we work with other nations until we learn their methods of thinking and make adjustments. All people need the same thing. They need clean air, clean water, nutritious food, and a relevant education. So they understand that systems arrive at direction. People don't have opinions about what direction to take, but they do studies. And according to the studies and the feedback from instrumentation, this determines how we govern the planet. You cannot govern the planet unless you have a resource survey, and you have to know what the capacity is of a planet to support so many people. Then people have to be educated in the methods of determining how many people we wish to have on Earth. I don't mean to destroy people. I mean to manage population in relation to the Earth's resources. All the cities of the future will be based on circumferential design or circular design. The city will vary from 2,000 to 1,000,000 people. Therefore, the architecture will change, but the circumferential design will always be included. My dream for the future is to put an end to war and to learn to live on Earth and to take care of the failing Earth conditions, the dumping of garbage into the oceans and the rivers and pollution of the air. An end to that by all nations. Since there wouldn't be any separate nations, there wouldn't be any need for each nation to do their part. They act as one nation. We all need restoration of the ocean world. We all need clean air. We all need more arable land. We all need more nutritious foods. I feel that what we must do is learn how to cooperate with one another rather than compete with one another.